When I look back on that summer, I realized it wasn't just about what happened in one single evening. It was about years of unresolved family tension, unspoken truths, and unexpected discoveries that reshaped how I looked at the people closest to me. My name is Laura, I'm 41 years old, and this story begins with something that might sound ordinary at first. A massage my step-nephew gave me when my back pain flared up. But nothing about that night turned out ordinary. His hands were shaking, and that moment exposed a chain of truths none of us were prepared to face. It was late June when my husband, Richard, and I invited his sister's family over to stay with us. His sister, Donna, had been through a tough divorce, and she was struggling to raise her teenage son, Ethan, on her own. Ethan was 19, just finishing his first year at community college, and working part-time to help his mom. He was polite, reserved, and always carried an air of nervous energy around him, as though the weight of his family's struggles rested heavily on his young shoulders. The night everything started, I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when my lower back gave out. It wasn't the first time. Years of working long hours at a desk had made me prone to back spasms. I leaned against the counter, clutching my side, and Richard rushed over. "Laura, are you okay?" he asked. I nodded, but I could feel the pain radiating down my spine. Donna suggested I lie down in the living room. I tried to dismiss it, but Ethan stepped forward awkwardly. "Aunt Laura," he said softly. Though technically I wasn't his blood aunt, the title had stuck. "I'm studying sports therapy in college. We've learned some massage techniques for muscle relief. If you'd like, I could, try to help." I hesitated. I didn't want to embarrass him, but the pain was real. Everyone was watching, and Richard said, "That's a good idea. Give it a try, Ethan." So, I sat on the couch, and Ethan stood behind me, placing his hands lightly on my shoulders. His touch was gentle but hesitant. Almost immediately, I noticed his hands were trembling. I thought it was just nerves, maybe the pressure of trying to help me in front of everyone. But the longer he continued, the more I felt something wasn't quite right. His palms were clammy, his movements stiff, like he was fighting an invisible weight. "You're shaking," I said softly, so only he could hear. He froze, then whispered back, "I'm sorry, Aunt Laura. I get nervous sometimes." Something in his voice struck me. It wasn't just nervousness about the massage. His tone carried a deeper unease, as though he was holding on to something heavy inside him. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I couldn't stop thinking about Ethan's shaking hands. I wondered if it was anxiety, or maybe something bigger. The following day, I found Ethan alone on the porch, staring out at the yard. I sat beside him and gently asked, "Are you okay? Yesterday you seemed nervous." He hesitated, then sighed. "I didn't want to mess up. I never want to mess anything up. Mom already has too much to deal with." His words cracked something open in me. I saw not just a young man, but someone carrying guilt that didn't belong to him. Over the next week, as Donna and Ethan stayed with us, I began to notice patterns. Ethan avoided eye contact whenever family tensions came up. He was overly apologetic, jumping to fix small problems that weren't even his fault. One evening, Richard asked Donna about her divorce, and Ethan stiffened as though the subject itself was unbearable. On the fourth night, the truth spilled out in the most unexpected way. I had been sorting laundry upstairs when I overheard Donna and Ethan arguing in the guest room. Donna's voice cracked with frustration. "You can't keep blaming yourself for what happened with your father," she cried. Ethan's voice was muffled, but I caught the words, "If I had told you sooner, maybe you wouldn't have gone through all of this." My heart pounded. I knew I shouldn't be listening, but I couldn't walk away. Their voices carried years of pain condensed into a few minutes. Later, when Ethan came downstairs to get some water, I gently pulled him aside. "You don't have to tell me," I said, "but if you ever need someone to listen, I'm here." He looked at me with eyes full of conflict. "You mean it?" he asked. That night, he finally opened up. We sat at the kitchen table, the house quiet around us, and he told me things that explained everything. Why his hands had been shaking, why he carried guilt that didn't belong to him. His father hadn't just walked out on Donna. There had been infidelity, lies, and betrayal so deep that it tore their family apart. Ethan had discovered his father's secret months before the divorce. He'd kept silent, afraid that telling the truth would destroy his family. By the time the truth came out, it was too late. His silence had eaten away at him, convincing him he was somehow responsible. I should have told Mom, he said, his hands trembling on the table. I watched her get hurt, and I said nothing. That's why I can't stop shaking sometimes. It's like my body remembers all the lies I kept. I reached across the table and took his hand. Ethan, you were a child. You weren't responsible for your father's choices. You don't need to carry his guilt. Tears welled in his eyes, and for the first time, I saw him release a fraction of the weight he had been holding. Over the days that followed, our bond grew stronger. I became someone he trusted, someone he could lean on without fear of judgment. But what I didn't realize was how my own life would change in the process, because Ethan's story forced me to look at my own marriage. Richard and I had been together for 12 years, and while I loved him, I had ignored small cracks in our relationship, the arguments left unresolved, the distance that crept in with time. Listening to Ethan, I realized how easy it was for secrets to build walls between people. I didn't want that for us. One evening, while Richard was sitting in the living room, I told him everything Ethan had shared. Not the private details, but enough for him to understand the weight his nephew carried. Richard was quiet for a long time before finally saying, "Maybe I haven't been there for him the way I should have." That night, for the first time in years, Richard and I talked honestly about our own struggles. Ethan's shaking hands had been a symbol, not just of his hidden pain, but of the unspoken truths that exist in every family. By the time Donna and Ethan left to return home, something had shifted in all of us. Ethan walked taller, as though the burden he carried wasn't quite as heavy anymore. Donna seemed lighter too, relieved that her son no longer had to hold everything inside. And Richard and I, we had begun the process of healing cracks we didn't even realize were threatening us. Sometimes the most unexpected moments, a massage from a nervous step-nephew, trembling hands on your shoulders, can reveal truths that change everything. And that's why, even though it began with something so ordinary, I'll never forget that summer. Because it wasn't just Ethan who healed a little. We all did.